Hello, I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours, and I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour because you got to pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
I'm proud of myself because I've had a couple of tours in the last couple of weeks that I did not lose my temper on, and it was a close thing. So the first one was a few nights ago. There was stormy weather coming in, and we all knew it. It was in the news report. Everyone seen the weather. It was obvious, and we even knew about when it was going to hit. And I knew that meant that at this particular stop, there was a good chance I was going to have to stop and take us somewhere drier. And I specifically chose a spot that was directly across the street from a balcony. And sure enough, at one point, I look up, I see the sky turning ever so slightly green. I feel a couple of raindrops, and I'm like, okay, it's about to downpour. We're going across the street. And I know that this is going to be a little bit of a difficult crossing, because it always is, because it's Rampart Street. And Rampart Street is a street where people drive fast, people do not stop at the crosswalks, and in fact do not stop for pretty much anything. So it's always a little bit of playing Frogger. And I gather my guests around, I explain we're crossing the street, but we need to be very careful and wait. And this one lady pushes through the group, as in she was at the back of the group, and she pushes her way to the front and just steps out in front of a moving truck and says, no, you just gotta go and they'll stop for you. And meanwhile, I'm like trying desperately to grab her to be like, no, they won't stop. And sure enough, the truck does not stop. It comes so close to her that I think the side view mirror literally brushed this woman's hair. And yet she won't back down. She's just standing there in traffic as trucks swerve around her and honk, going, no, they'll stop for you. And I'm like, they're not stopping. And her daughter is pushing from the back of the group to try to stop her. And eventually there's a break in traffic. And I'm like, okay, we're going now. And we make it across the street just in time for the rain to really start. And she gets under the balcony. And I'm sitting there like, okay, we're at least done with that. I'm not going to address it. And her daughter seems to know she did wrong. So hopefully this will be fine. And when I look over a couple minutes more, she's gone. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And one of the other guests on the walk to the next stop was like, yeah, I think her daughter dragged her off of the tour because she was so embarrassed by her behavior. And I'm like, valid, because she just risked her life for no reason. But the other one was tonight. So tonight I had one of those people who just really thinks they're the main character of the tour, and specifically the kind that wants to be the stand-up comedian on the tour. He kept wanting to throw in his own little jokes, and none of his jokes were landing, and a lot of them were on the verge of inappropriate, and I was just like, this is getting awkward. And I knew right away I was going to have a bad time of it, because at the very first stop, when I have literally just completed the rules, one of the other guests raises her hand to say something. I'm like, go ahead. And she explains she's in a wheelchair, which is visibly obvious, but that she does have the ability to walk. So if we see her get up, she can walk for a few feet. She cannot walk further. And I'm like, thank you. That's really useful information for me, because that way I know that if we get stuck in a spot that I can't get a wheelchair around, we can get you up for a minute. And I thank her and we move on. And this guy raises his hand. I'm like, yes, you have a question as well. And he says, yeah. So like, if you don't need the wheelchair, can I have it? And oh God, it was one of those moments where you could feel the tension in the air, that everyone knew that that was 100% not an appropriate joke to try to make. And she gets that tight smile on her face and is like, and I'm like, no, you can't, sir. And she sort of tries to play it off with, well, if anyone's going to borrow my wheelchair, it will be my elderly mother, not you. And we sort of move on, and it's okay-ish, kinda. And then we get to the end of the second stop, which is a very dark and disturbing story, a very serious bit of history. And we've had a couple of really good historical questions, people asking important details. And this guy raises his hand, and I'm like, I don't want to do it, but yes, sir. And he asks, what's everybody drinking? And there is ringing silence again. And everyone is doing that thing where they're not making eye contact with anyone. They're just sort of looking at the ground because nobody wants to say anything. And I was just like, yeah, most people aren't drinking. Let's move on. And Like, it was like this at every stop. Every stop, he had something to say. And he even explained himself between two of the stops, being like, yeah, I'm gonna try to lighten the mood. I'm gonna make some jokes. And I'm like, sir, you don't need to. I have jokes in the tour already. And mine actually are hitting, but I couldn't say that. So instead it was just like, you really don't need to, sir. Thank you. And it was all super awkward. But the most awkward moment was at the bar break, because he went into the bar and he came back almost immediately. And I'm like, dude, no, like, spend some more time in the bar. I don't need you back right now. But instead he wants to talk to me. And that's my job. So I'm polite and friendly, like, yeah, let's talk. And he's like, let me tell you about myself. And I'm like, I don't really need to know about you, but sure. And he explains that he used to live in Vietnam with, quote, the native tribes. And I'm like, okay. And he talks about how they used to sacrifice people so they could talk to ghosts. And I'm like, I'm not going to comment on that. And luckily at that point, one of the other guests asked a question. Actually, the family with the woman in the wheelchair. So I'm like, I'm going to go talk to them. I'll be back. And I go over and chat with them. And he doesn't wait for me to come back. Instead, he comes over. And in a brief pause in the conversation, he says, isn't it great to live in America where everything's so safe and stable? Aren't you all just so happy you're living in such a good country? And I'm sitting here like, dude. Do you mean stable like a volcano? But I'm a good girl. I'm polite. I just sort of smile and change the subject. Because sometimes that's all you can do.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.